Good Friday football in round 8 of the League of Ireland Premier Division, and both Bohemians and Shamrock Rovers will be looking to make it a great Friday with victory in an eagerly anticipated Dublin derby. I'm Aidan O'Hara. I'm joined on independent.ie by soccer correspondent Daniel McDonnell. And Dan, Dalymount Park is really the only place to start looking ahead.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think in fairness, like the Bows Rovers derby, in my view, has probably had it's not that it was ever low, but I think it's had a bit of even a revival comparatively in recent seasons. There would have been a phase in the mid, I don't know, do we call it the 2010s, like in hindsight, that decade, where, it was at times it was like a mid-table clash. And yes, like you'd have good crowds and there would be a little bit of a spark around them, but it was on the edge of, Dundalk and Cork's battle for titles across various years, and that's what it was. But now it just feels like a game of real significance. Probably particularly now when you have this weird situation where Bows are top of the table and Shamrock Rovers are playing catch up, which is a new twist on the theme. So I think it's got the potential, and potential is the word, to be a very good night.
Yeah, I think between like the situation the Bows have put themselves in is an ideal situation where they've got Rovers and I think they've got Derry on Monday night as well. Give them a really good idea of where they are, and they have that. Like if it doesn't go well, they still have that buffer of having a significant number of points in the opening series of fixtures. It's never a free hit against Shamrock Rovers, but certainly Rovers are the ones more under pressure than Bows.
Yeah, definitely, and it's true. I mean, I understand the free hit language that can be used, and I suppose it's funny because going back to it, there probably was times in the last decade where the Rovers game was always a free hit for Bows. But it's a free hit in a different context now. In the sense that, they've played everyone else in the league apart from Shamrock Rovers and Derry, who are probably still the likely top two. So yeah, there is that slight question mark over their level. Have they just been very, very good at beating the other teams they want to finish ahead of? But there is that sense that, as much as Shamrock Rovers won last week, Shamrock Rovers Derry also won. Bows are just getting a little bit of momentum going. But I suppose you can flip it around. There comes a point where a little bit of pressure kicks in on Bows because, part of the free hits thing came from, this whole they were the part-time club against the full-time club. How could they expect to compete with these? Now, look, there's no doubt that the Shamrock Rovers squad at the moment is far more expensively assembled than the Bows one, but Bows are now a full-time club, in terms of preparation, in terms of budget as well. Like they've recruited well, and they have players that a lot of other clubs would like to have. And there's probably a stage where maybe you sense opportunity, that your rivals have started off slowly, and that maybe you never know. Like you see Arsenal in the Premier League, and you see seasons that out of nowhere you start well, you can keep it going, and I'm sure as much as they'll want to play it down in every sense, there's got to be a part of them thinking we could go 13 points ahead of Shamrock Rovers on this night. And I guess there comes a point where the free hit lingo is replaced by a little bit of expectation creeping in. And I'm sure they'll sense that want and that desire from their fans, which I suppose does bring its own pressures eventually.
Mm-hmm. We lamented the fact a couple of weeks ago that Derry and Rovers wasn't on TV. This is a new territory on Virgin Media, this game. Like in terms of I hate putting things up as advertisements for the league. It always sounds very very grand kind of statement. But they are two teams that kind of like to get the ball down and play. So it should be, notwithstanding that it's a bitter rivalry and a derby and all that sort of stuff, there should be some good football played as well.
No, you'd hope so, definitely. I mean, you try and sort of imagine what type of contest it would be. I mean, thing is, the games that Shamrock Rovers are involved in, yes, they mix it up sometimes, but like they play a similar formation. Yes, they will go more direct at times if the pitch sort of lends itself to it. But I watched them in Dundalk last week. I mean, they still have sort of Jack Byrne seems to be in better form. He was speaking today. He's still trying to pull the strings where he can. You've got Johnny Kenny, Rory Gaffney, sort of Johnny Kenny's probably more of a direct threat in behind, which maybe they've lacked at times in terms of speed. But then Bows, yeah, the strength of Bows this year, I mean, they've good options in midfield, but it's actually in attacking areas where they can be quite exciting. Like they've got Jonathan Afolabi, central striker, who's a real handful, but then Ali Coote is a sort of a floating playmaker who can play right side or central. James Akintunde, who have signed from Derry, has been a good link player. Again, Dylan Connolly's pace. So again, these are attributes that you would hope lend itself to like a more creative contest, or maybe more explosive than creative. Maybe some of the attributes of players, and that it won't be overly technical. Maybe, and you'd assume being a derby, there's going to be a fair bit of sort of competitive physicality to it. And I think Bows, if Keith Buckley is fit in particular, they'll want to bring a little bit of that. But I hope it does deliver as a contest. I mean, there is obviously a sense that most teams who play Shamrock Rovers probably know that you don't mind if you let them have the ball for periods, and you try and strike effectively. And Bows definitely have counter-attacking capabilities, but as a side, like they also have players who enjoy being on the front foot, so I can't see them necessarily sitting off either. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, it's true, like it's on TV. Sometimes there's an excessive focus on one game, but and then it's underwhelming if it's somehow disappointing. But it's like the nature of these games are sometimes they are. But I'd be hopeful enough that the atmosphere around it and the profile of the players on the pitch should lead it to a decent game. And in fairness, like we talk about the TV stuff again and again, in Virgin, like there's mixed views. I mean, they're getting the free hit at it themselves. They haven't signed a contract, but they're trying to make a bit of a push around it. And there seems to be a good sort of level of discussion around this game, and hopefully, it gets enough eyeballs on it to sort of justify doing more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few other games, obviously, that we talk about too. It's not just full round of fixtures. Derry City and Drogheda. I mean, Derry going back to the Brandywell, where you've spoken before about the pitch there, that not really suiting them. Drogheda are likely to, you'd imagine, go up and park the bus and let Derry try and break them down. I believe was it 3 draws against them last year? So Drogheda have a habit of creating a few issues for, if you like, the stronger teams in the division.
Yeah, no, they do. And I mean, Drogheda and Derry have had some half decent battles in recent seasons, close ones, like, so yeah, I don't think Drogheda will be like, I don't think they'll be terrified about going to the Brandywell. I think the point is, the pitch doesn't suit Derry. They can't really get into a rhythm at times. They have a very technical team, and what you will find is a team, and I'm not saying Drogheda will do it, but it's a pragmatic thing to do, is to let Derry have the ball, and hope that you can sort of defend your box reasonably well and keep them at arm's length and frustrate them. And that's what some teams have succeeded in doing up there. Now Derry would hope, like they've got the likes of Ryan Graydon, who got the winner against Shells last week. Like they have players who can be a little bit more direct and threat from crosses even as well. So they've got, like, they need to develop that all-round skill set if they're going to win the league, to win these games where teams try and frustrate them. And I think it's a weekend where, I mean, it's a double header at home, Bows on Monday. Certainly, I think they'll fancy themselves to win this one.
Yeah, the real springboard there. 6 points to finish the, potentially, 6 points from home games to push them into Series 2. I mean, Sligo had a bit of a hiding last week. They could, put it down a little bit to sending off against Rovers. Necessarily react brilliantly, it wouldn't seem to that sending off. Sligo at home, so again, with our home game, looking to kind of bounce back.
Yeah, I think Dundalk Sligo Rovers probably one of those games where, like, it's possible if there's a series of results going a particular way this weekend, if Dundalk were to beat Sligo Rovers, you see these little gaps. The table can be quite congested, but you can see these gaps starting to open up. And I suppose in terms of Dundalk's ambitions, it's probably realistically, it's to stay ahead of the other teams that want to break into the European spots. And like Sligo Rovers would one of the clubs with those ambitions. So yeah, I mean, the Sligo Rovers lost themselves to Bows last week. It wasn't a classic. Dundalk Shamrock Rovers, I was at that. Yeah, no, they like 4-0 is maybe a harsh scoreline on paper. What I would say is the locals, after I probably mentioned it here last week, they weren't going mad afterwards. I think they understand the nature of the game got away from them. But yeah, I just think like they've maybe one or two games this season, the Dundalk at home, they haven't started them particularly well, and they finished strongly. I think they just need to be maybe a little bit conscious. I mean, they've probably conceded first in a few of their matches this year. Even the UCD, the opening day, they started slowly, so they probably just need to try and get on the front foot earlier at home. But yeah, like again, like Sligo Rovers are, I feel like they're decent, but they have a lot of players who are new to the league who are finding their way and maybe struggle for a bit of consistency.
Yeah, it's hard to know what way they can be sort of, I guess, awkward opponents without being disrespectful to them. And speaking of which, a couple of ones that are travelling right, Cork are travelling up to Pats, probably looking to get themselves back on track a little bit. With Pats have had some good momentum in the last couple of weeks with a couple of good results, and they'll be looking to keep that going at home.
Yeah, I think probably after the derby, I think the Pats Cork one is probably the next most interesting game in a way, because the Pats did win last week against UCD, but there's still that niggling sense of, okay, have they really turned a corner, and got over the early season blues? And this is the type of game that they probably need to win to prove that. And you're probably looking at two fan bases here, Pats and Cork, where I feel like the fans of both clubs are maybe on the brink of becoming a little bit unhappy if things don't go their way. So like Pats, it's obvious they just need to get another win on the board and push on and prove that they're over their blip. With Cork, I mean, they've had these, they led away in Tala, led away in Sligo, didn't see out either of them. And then they're just struggling a bit at home, and I'm picking up the vibe from people just not maybe overly enthused, and they're sitting second from bottom, and just have to lose these games, then what way is their season going? So I feel like it's a big momentum game for both of those clubs.
Yeah, it's second from bottom against third from bottom, but the way the league is, certainly from Cork up, a couple of wins could get a team on the table. UCD though could adrift almost already. They're home to Shells. It's difficult to. It's the sort of game that they'd be targeting, I guess, but haven't shown much UCD in terms of what they can do this season.
No, like and as I said, I've a huge time for Andy Myler, and I think I sort of probably made the point. Like usually, the players spend a lot of time together, and across last season they improved when people thought they would regress when they lost a couple of players. But it just feels like it's a big ask for them this year. And the flip side of that, though, was any team that goes to play UCD at the moment knows they're really expected to win. And Shells, who we've spoken about at times, have been very good at stopping other teams from playing and sort of really being competitive against every team in the league. It sort of flips round here to a game where people are just expecting them, their fans are just expecting them to turn up and win. Now they've gone and they've won away in Cork, and they've shown that they can do it. And I think even their attacking play has been a little bit better in the last couple of weeks. So I think, yeah, for their own sense, that they play Sligo Rovers on Monday, they'll probably look at it as a weekend where, yeah, the best case scenario of 6 points is possible. Bit of good news from Gavin Malloy has signed a new contract. Is one of their top young talents. Now, sometimes these lads signing a contract is about protecting them for fees moving overseas. They've a new CEO, things going on with Talca, probably locking on with Shell, so they'll be hoping for an uneventful Friday in Belfield.
Yeah, and briefly down into the first division, Waterford away to Cove, building on last week. And just to mention, Finn Harps sort of hiding against Waterford, they make an even longer journey. So just looking Ballybuffet to Tralee, 5 hours, 5 minutes, and 410 kilometres.
Yeah.
It's a long way for them. So just to have a look at those.
Yeah, I mean, there's a debate over what the longest trip for Finn Harps is. There could be travel time or kilometres or whatever, and which it is. But either way, it's a long trip, and it was a long one last week. I see Kerry have sold out again, which I think is just, I mean, they're bottom of the first division, and they're still people still want to go and support their team. It's great, you would like to see them get a win eventually, but if this is the game, it sort of plunges Harps into crisis mode. The Cove one, I mean, I saw Cove in Kerry on the first day, and in fairness to Shane Keegan, they're actually getting something going there, and the crowds even have been decent for a pretty small club, and maybe in terms of their scope and potential. But I'd imagine actually Cove Waterford will be a well attended game, and it'll be a good fixture to attend. And yeah, I mean, Waterford have this Keith Long, Alan Reynolds ticket. You presume they're going to take off. But this is probably one of the trickier games they could face at the moment. A team with a little bit of steel about them that's in good form. So yeah, no, I think if that would be the game to look out for, it's the right one to pick out. I think Cove and Waterford.
Should be some good games tonight, Dan. We'll speak to you again after the games. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.